Good afternoon. This hearing will come to order. Chairman Graves will be joining us shortly. I'll fill in for him here in the interim. Would like to thank all of our witnesses for taking the time to be able to join us here today. To be able to gain an advantage in an increasingly competitive marketplace, small businesses are looking for innovative ways to be able to cut costs and be able to gain access to customers. One small way that businesses are doing this is through the use of cutting-edge technologies that can provide efficiencies, and Bitcoins may be one of these innovative technologies. Bitcoins are a form of virtual currency first introduced in 2008 that allows users to exchange value digitally through the Internet. Despite not being backed by a government or holding any intrinsic value of their own, Bitcoins are growing as an alternative payment method. This hearing will examine the benefits and risks associated with Bitcoin as a payment system for all small businesses. While the origins of Bitcoin remain mysterious, it has grown rapidly in the last few years. Businesses choose to accept Bitcoin for many reasons, including to be at the forefront of new technology, to attract customers now using Bitcoin, to lower transaction fees from credit and debit cards, and to eliminate certain kinds of fraud. Despite these advantages, there are numerous risks that small businesses should consider before implementing a Bitcoin payment system. These risks include volatility of price, security, and policy uncertainty. Further recent developments in the Bitcoin industry have cast a shadow on security and sustainability. Hacking attacks have led to the downfall of a leading Bitcoin exchange company, while its use for criminal activity has led to greater scrutiny by law enforcement and other federal and state banking regulators. We've invited a distinguished panel of experts who will explain what Bitcoin is, and we appreciate that, and how it operates, why it might be a good fit for small businesses, and what the risks are associated with Bitcoin. We hope that by providing information about Bitcoin, small businesses will be in a better position to know whether adopting Bitcoin as a payment system might be a way for small businesses to be able to gain more customers. This hearing will also inform members as we consider implications of policies affecting the use of virtual currencies. With that, I'd again like to thank our distinguished panel of witnesses for joining us here today, and I now recognize the ranking member for her opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here today. American entrepreneurship is closely linked to technological innovation. Whether it was the arrival of Google or Facebook, the widespread use of smartphone apps, or cloud computing, our nation's entrepreneurs drive many technological developments. Not only do small firms help create new technologies that drive growth, but they often benefit from the advent of new systems and processes. The relatively recent arrival of digital currencies is one technology that presents significant opportunity. Just as the Internet has empowered entrepreneurs to reach new global markets and identify more efficient ways of doing business, digital currencies like Bitcoin can save small firms on transaction costs. For a small company accepting major credit cards, each card swipe can cost as much as 1/4 cent, in addition to having to return 3 to 6% of sales total to the credit card company. Some credit card companies also charge businesses to join the network. By contrast, when utilizing Bitcoin, there is no cost of joining the network. Fees are less than 1%. For large retailers and big box stores, this cost may sound minor, but among small companies operating on thin margins, those expenditures add up. Moreover, should currencies like Bitcoin become widely utilized, they could create competitive pressure for conventional financial institutions to lower transaction fees in an effort to retain small business customers. Beyond allowing small firms to save on transaction costs, Bitcoins offer consumers other advantages. For customers seeking anonymity, Bitcoins provide more privacy than credit card transactions. Small firms are gradually recognizing the promise of accepting Bitcoins. In 2012, about 1,000 businesses used PitPay, the largest processor of Bitcoin payments. Today, more than 13,000 small businesses in the U.S. employ this service. While most are online sellers, 1 in 5 are traditional brick-and-mortar operations, suggesting the technology is gaining broader acceptance. Although this growth sounds promising, a number of unanswered questions might be impeding small businesses' use of Bitcoin. Price fluctuation for Bitcoins create complications. Last spring, Bitcoin's dollar exchange rate rose sharply from $50 to $350 and then fell to $70. With swings like this, one has to wonder whether small businesses will find it difficult to continually price and reprice their products in order to ensure they receive fair compensation from customers. There are also security questions. Hacking incidents in 2012 and 2013 endangered many users' Bitcoins. More recently, the bankruptcy of Mt. Gox, one of the largest Bitcoin exchange, was followed by news that the company has lost hundreds of millions of dollars in Bitcoins. For small businesses to fully benefit from this currency, customers must be assured their money is safe and cannot be snatched out of cyberspace. It also remains to be seen how the IRS recent ruling declaring Bitcoin a property as opposed to a currency will impact this technology growth. In all these areas, the committee has an obligation to ensure small business interests are taken into account. We want small firms to benefit from this technology, but we must see to it that there are safeguards protecting them and their customers. Likewise, we must see that tax regulatory changes do not preclude the use of this currency. I expect today's hearing will help us learn about complex issues like this and assist the committee as it addresses such matters going forward. In that regard, I would like to thank our witnesses for being here, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Ms. Velasquez. If committee members have an opening statement prepared, I ask that they submit it for the record. I'd like to take a moment just to be able to explain our timing lights. You will each have 5 minutes for your testimony. The light will start out as green. When you get into the danger zone is when it moves to yellow. And when it gets to the red, if you would conclude your statements at that time, we would appreciate it. So again, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this afternoon. Our first witness is Mr. Jerry Brito, Senior Research Fellow at Mercatus Center at George Mason University. Mr. Brito focuses his research on technology, internet policy, copyright, and regulatory process. Mr. Brito is a co-author of Bitcoin, a primer for policymakers. Mr. Brito, thank you for being here, and I look forward to your testimony. Please.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for inviting me here today to comment on Bitcoin's use for small businesses. Virtual currencies and electronic payment systems are nothing new. They have existed for decades. So what is it about Bitcoin that makes it unique? Bitcoin is the world's first completely decentralized digital currency, and it's the decentralized part that makes it unique. Prior to Bitcoin's invention in 2009, online currencies or payment systems had to be managed by a central authority, whether it was Facebook issuing Facebook credits or PayPal ensuring that transactions between its customers were reconciled. However, by ingeniously solving some longstanding problems in computer science, Bitcoin for the first time makes possible electronic transactions that are person-to-person without the need for an intermediary between them, just like cash. This technical breakthrough presents both potential benefits and risks for consumers and small businesses. For example, because there is no central intermediary in Bitcoin transactions, fees associated with those transactions are relatively small. Small businesses accepting credit card payments often face fees of around 25 cents for each card swipe plus 2 to 4% of the transaction total. If you're a small margin business, those fees can really eat into your bottom line. In contrast, businesses that use a merchant processor like BitPay or Coinbase pay fees of 1% or less on Bitcoin transactions. If you're a small margin business, that difference could mean doubling your profits. Another reason small businesses are attracted to Bitcoin is that, like cash, all transactions are final. And again, because there is no central intermediary, there is no third party that can reverse a transaction. This protects small businesses from chargeback fraud, which often results not just in the loss of a sale, but also in penalty fees. And such friendly fraud accounts for 41% of all claims. And if a merchant has 1% of their charges reversed as chargebacks, they can often be kicked out of the credit card networks, potentially ending their business. And finally, because Bitcoin is decentralized, businesses can now accept international payments that were not previously possible. There are over 50 countries that traditional payment processors do not serve, often because of high fraud rates. Because Bitcoin payments are global and final, doing business with consumers in those countries, especially in developing countries, is now feasible. For consumers, the benefit Bitcoin presents is essentially choice. Wishing to encourage its use, merchants frequently offer discounts to customers who pay with Bitcoin. This means consumers will be able to choose to pay a little more and get the benefits of using a credit card, like fraud insurance and airline miles, or they can choose to pay a little less by using Bitcoin. For some price-sensitive consumers, this could be a very valuable choice. Of course, there are also risks associated with Bitcoin. Chief among these is Bitcoin's historic volatility. It has traded from a low of pennies when it was first introduced in 2009 to a high of $1,200 last December, with wild short-term swings. However, there's nothing inherent in Bitcoin's design that naturally makes it so extremely volatile. Its extreme volatility is likely attributable to the fact that it's a new currency. Bitcoin is still an experiment, and it's still in the process of discovering a more stable price. Additionally, as a nascent currency, it is very thinly traded, and as a result, a single large enough trade can affect the exchange price substantially. If Bitcoin's use continues to expand, potentially we could expect to see extreme volatility subside. Additionally, derivatives that allow investors to bet against the price of Bitcoin will soon become available, and this should help stabilize the price as well. The volatility risk is one that a small business faces if it accepts Bitcoins directly. It should be noted, however, that small businesses can use Bitcoin entirely as a payment system without ever holding Bitcoins. And in fact, this is what most small businesses do. Using a merchant service company like BitPay or Coinbase, merchants can denominate merchants can denominate prices in dollars, not in Bitcoin, and denominate their prices in dollars, accept Bitcoins for payment at the current exchange rate, and then immediately convert those Bitcoins to dollars, never actually holding a Bitcoin. Security is another concern. Because Bitcoin is essentially a digital cash, securing it is vitally important. There is no intermediary that can replace your Bitcoins if they are stolen. As we have seen, however, merchants need not hold Bitcoins. And as interest in Bitcoin expands, we are seeing a great deal of innovation and investment in secure consumer products. But this still means that exchanges, merchant processors, and other new Bitcoin intermediaries will have to earn consumers' trust, just as Visa and PayPal have. Like the Internet itself, Bitcoin has the potential to be a platform for the kind of permissionless innovation that has driven so much of the growth of our economy. And like all emerging technologies, Bitcoin also presents risks. The challenge for policymakers is to address those risks while doing no harm to the innovative potential of the technology. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, sir. Our next witness is Adam White, Director of Business Development and Sales at Coinbase. Coinbase is a payment processing company for businesses interested in accepting Bitcoin. Prior to joining Coinbase, Mr. White served in the United States Air Force and was a test pilot for NASA before receiving his MBA from Harvard Business School. Appreciate you being here with us today, Mr. White, and look forward to your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Velasquez, and other members of the committee for the opportunity to appear here today. My name is Adam White, and the Director of Business Development and Sales at Coinbase, a company founded in June 2012 with the goal of making it easy for merchants and consumers to transact with the digital currency Bitcoin. More than 1 million consumers use Coinbase as their digital wallet, and as of today, there are nearly 28,000 businesses that entrust Coinbase to accept Bitcoin payments on their behalf using our payment tools. These merchants include large enterprise-level businesses such as Overstock.com and Big Fish Games, as well as tens of thousands of small businesses like Teelit, Tuft & Needle, and Mondo Sellers. Prior to my role at Coinbase, I served as a captain in the United States Air Force and am a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. I'd like to begin today by outlining the inherent benefits of Bitcoin in commerce, namely the powerful prevention of fraud, the reduction of transaction fees, and the monetization of new markets, and how these benefits can be a positive influence on businesses of all sizes. Bitcoin enables individuals to push payments to merchants without having to share personally identifiable information that can be intercepted by criminals and used for fraudulent purposes. This irreversible nature of Bitcoin enables the abstraction of personal information and significantly reduces the risk of fraud, something that merchants, card processors, and banks spend billions of dollars per year combating. With Bitcoin, for example, the target data breach that compromised 40 million consumers' credit card information would not have been possible. Moreover, this irreversibility shields merchants from chargebacks, that is, the forced return of funds from a merchant to a customer's bank account, and the cost associated with managing, defending, and preventing fraudulent chargeback claims. In response, many card issuers and merchants use fraud detection systems that are overly sensitive to trigger activities, especially in card-not-present transactions common online. Initial estimates suggest that some merchants turn away nearly 8% of incoming orders due to issues associated with suspicious activity. Many of these transactions, however, are in fact legitimate. Bitcoin prevents the need for risk algorithms and ensures merchants capture 100% of their customers' orders. Due to the powerful prevention of fraud and the reduction in the number of intermediaries required to process a payment, Bitcoin transactions are dramatically less expensive than traditional card-based payments. Merchants can reduce their electronic payment acceptance fees to less than 1% when accepting payment in Bitcoin. This is especially important for small businesses that sacrifice anywhere between 3 and 5% of their revenues in card transaction fees. Businesses can use these savings to reinvest in their company or return them to consumers in the form of lower prices. Moreover, merchants are not subject to a fixed fee per transaction, enabling them to forego minimum transaction limits and sell small ticket items profitably. Finally, Bitcoin provides the opportunity to monetize new markets by democratizing foreign exchange and enabling frictionless cross-border transactions that settle immediately. Many products and services are not available for sale in foreign countries because the business cannot manage the payment systems needed to support overseas commerce. Because of the borderless and global nature of Bitcoin, a Bitcoin payment made by a customer in New York looks identical to a merchant as a Bitcoin payment made by a customer in London, Buenos Aires, or Tokyo. There are no individual currency conversion fees associated with Bitcoin payments, so merchants can sell low-margin items just as profitably abroad as they do domestically. The ability to easily begin accepting payments from customers around the world can open up whole new markets for merchants and significantly improve top-line revenue. We see Bitcoin as an extremely powerful technology, and it is our goal to bring these efficiencies created by the Bitcoin network to the masses. We are encouraged to see the committee's proactive examination into the topic of Bitcoin as it relates to small businesses, and I look forward to engaging in dialogue and answering any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. White. Our next witness is Mark Williams, a professor of finance and risk at the Boston University School of Management. Before joining the faculty at Boston University, Mr. Williams worked as a senior trading floor executive, a bank trust officer, and as a bank examiner for the Federal Reserve Bank. Mr. Williams holds an MBA from Boston University School of Business and a BS from the University of Delaware. Welcome, Mr. Williams, and please begin.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for inviting me. In particular, I'm very interested in Bitcoin, and the reason for that interest really stemmed from classroom discussions going back to 2011. At that point in time, prices were 35 cents, so it was more of a theoretical discussion, but very quickly within the classroom it moved from discussion to, by 2012, when Bitcoin prices started to increase by over $1, to actually homework assignments. And then eventually these homework assignments turned into outright discussions and debate in the classroom. By 2013, the price of Bitcoin by January had increased actually to $13 a coin. Very quickly in 2013, it escalated from $13 all the way up to $1,200. It was remarkable. But what was unusual about this price run-up at the peak in 2013 was the fact that this was a 9,000% increase. Nowhere on this planet or any planet has there been that sort of price increase. And what that represented to the marketplace in particular is the fact that this was a unique product and a unique risk. So what I'd like to do today is I'd like to focus specifically not on the promised benefits of Bitcoin, because we've heard enough about that, but I'd like to take my discipline in risk management, in particular working on a commodity trading floor, and talk specifically about the risks that are associated with Bitcoin. In particular, I've provided a 30-page testimony which outlines 10 of the specific risks, what I consider to be the top risks associated with Bitcoin. But what I'd like to do for the committee right now is really focus on the top 6 risks, and I'll leave this up for the discussion later. In particular, the first risk, which is very important to look at, is that for big businesses and for little businesses, is that Bitcoin itself is not legal tender. And what I mean by that is the fact there's no legal precedence, that is, that sets that individuals and corporations themselves have to accept Bitcoin. So as a result, it's a very voluntary commodity. So just as equally as we can turn the light off today, if the market decides they don't want to accept Bitcoin anymore, the value could drop to worthless. Now, what's very interesting about that statement of worthless, we've seen Bitcoin drop already. Since its high in December, it's dropped by roughly 60%. So clearly, this is not a currency. Currencies don't behave like this. But what this is a high-risk speculative commodity. Since December, what have we seen? We've seen daily price movements of up to 10%. Can you imagine having currency in your wallet that can move up or down by 10%? That would be hot currency. You would, if you're worried about it dropping by 10%, you'd be selling it very quickly, getting it out of your wallet. If you thought it would appreciate, you would hoard it. And these characteristics are characteristics that you see in Bitcoin. Over 90% of Bitcoin is hoarded. What that means is only 10% of what's available trades. Increasingly, we've had changes within the marketplace. Last week, the IRS came out with a formal ruling and said Bitcoin is not currency. What it is, it's property. And what that means, it reduces the likelihood of people to use it to spend. It actually gives a disincentive. What it increases, though, is the incentive to hoard. So this is the opposite of what you want in a currency. Currencies, we collectively use currencies because currencies themselves provide us with the ability to buy things. A $100 bill has not value to us to put on the wall, but that $100 bill has value for us to buy art that we can then put on the wall. Bitcoin is unusual in that regard. The fascination and fixation of investors on Bitcoin is tied directly to it as a commodity, as something to speculate, not as something to use as a transactional currency. So what are some of the other risks? There's extreme price volatility. That was discussed earlier as well. And with that extreme price volatility with daily movements of 10%, what that means, to put it in perspective, Bitcoin is 7 times more risky than gold, 8 times more risky than the S&P 500. In particular, it's 15 times more risky than the US dollar. And just for fun, I'll throw this out. If you look at the Argentinian peso, Bitcoin is 7 times more risky than the peso. So as you can see, this is not currency, but this is a very risky commodity. But more importantly, when we think about businesses, your average business, they actually have profit margins of maybe 10%, 15% to be liberal. If you have a daily fluctuation of 10%, what that means is that profit margins can be evaporated within a period of days, and that's of concern. 2 quick more risks that I'll bring up to the committee, and that's the asset bubble. Many noted economists have mentioned of this asset bubble, and we've seen it actually since December start to implode. As I mentioned, the price dropped by 60%. In addition, the number 5th risk is a growing concentration risk. We're seeing firms like Coinbase doing a nice job of trying to mitigate the market risk, but what's happening is they're moving the risk from, let's say, 20 or 30,000 people to their balance sheet. So they're warehousing that risk, and there's not a mature market for them to offload that risk. So we have concentrated risk on their books. They're thinly capitalized. They're a startup. There's no minimum capital requirements. So what should happen if one of these or both of these firms were to blow up? Then consumers, the U.S. businesses would be impacted. And then finally, when we think about Bitcoin, there's Bitcoin tax, which now is a risk in the sense of using Bitcoin on a daily basis, deciding whether to pay, for example, employees or actually accepting it as currency. If you're having daily fluctuations of 10%, you can see capital gains very quickly. So I thank you for your patience.
Gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind, we apologize. Naturally, when we start, we get a vote called. And we want to make sure that our last witness has the appropriate amount of time, and our folks are going to be able to listen. So we'll go into recess, run over and vote. I believe it's going to be a short vote, and should be back in 20 minutes or so. Is that about right? So if you don't mind, and apologize, and certainly appreciate your patience. Thank you.